Hello and welcome to Stampscapes 101. This is video 5. I'm going to be adding in some tones to a scene that we stamped out in one of the previous videos. I want to get around to doing some special effects in the scenes using some white gel pen and white pigment inks to add a little bit of atmosphere into the scenes. So I'm going to get right into the inking up of this scene right here because YouTube only allows for a 15-minute segment, so let's just get right into it. I covered color application and with the use of dye-based inks in a previous episode. I'm going to be working in some green tones in the same way that I did with the blue tones for this scene. Alright, starting off with a really light ink. This is just a blue color right here. The eventual color of this meadow down here is not going to be blue, but you can always start off with the primary colors. Blue and yellows will mix to form green, so I'm not really going to be worried about adding something like a blue down here, because I'm going to be overlapping it with a lot of other green tones to come. Maybe this one, and we'll see how that goes. Lightly dabbing on the ink, getting a good saturation to get a good coating of that ink. What I like to do is I like to oscillate my values throughout a scene, meaning I like to have certain areas light and dark within a given space. So in some of these areas right here, as I apply some color down like this, I'm going to leave some other areas, maybe just the white of the card. And that'll especially come into play kind of more so when I move into my medium tones. Alright? So to just cover up everything, you know, the same uniform value, kind of mix it up a little bit, and it gives it a little bit more variety and I think visual interest. Okay, let's see, same thing down here in the water, leaving a little bit of water light. Okay, now sometimes when you have a lot of things going on in the scene, you can use your inks to create a sky or a cloud, and it doesn't have to be something like an actual image. You can just do little swipes of color, and again, this is a real easy glide like this because I'm starting off with an Adirondack light color and going into that same concept of leaving some of these areas light down here. If you're creating some kind of cloud or vapor in the sky, the thing that's being illuminated up here is just the area that you leave the white of the card. So I'm kind of streaking in some color right here. I have the applicator kind of at an angle, doing very narrow areas. If I want to get it wider, I just kind of keep going on the same area. And so this is what's kind of going on here. And whatever area is left light is going to be my cloud. Okay. I have a good saturation with that initial ink. Now let's start moving up into the other colors. Going on with that, why don't we address the sky, you know, being that I was just kind of talking about that. Going on with this color is called Salvia Blue. And again, it's not a big jump in value from my previous color. I'm kind of still going with the light blue. Okay, if you want to dab too, you can do that. Get a good saturation, like a little puddle. What I like to do is I kind of like to get a little puddle of ink, and then I like to spread that around. So it's like dragging off a little puddle that's been built up on the surface of the paper. And again, you know, if I want to, I can kind of bring some of this color down here into the grassy area, and here again in the water area. Why not add a little bit of that blue down here? And again, I was talking about the framing of your scenes using darker edges when I did my Cloud with Moon scene. And I can do the same thing here. I'm kind of making the areas a little bit darker on the edges. In this case, it's the corners. I start looking around for other areas, opportunities to add additional value, maybe some shadows underneath my trees. Okay. Okay, moving on. let's start moving into, well, let's just, why don't we add one more color to the sky? Here's this is called light blue, but it's really a fairly dark one in terms of the value scale. But the darker you take your areas around, in this case, it's kind of a manufactured cloud. The darker you take the areas around it, the brighter those light areas are going to seem by contrast. Okay. And, I don't know, let me see. Let me add one more value of blue. This is the number 3. That's the name of it, just blue. Okay. Okay, do little streaks up there as well. Kind of gives it a nice, soft sky type of effect. Okay, now let's switch off. Let's start adding in some additional green tones, and let's warm up this bottom area here with some additional colors. Usually what I do with these little sponge applicator tips is I use a different tip for a different family of colors. These things just snap off really easy, and you can stamp in a new tip right there. And let's just go with some warmer tones, these greens. Start with the lightest one. Get a good saturation of ink. Start off in the darker areas, and then kind of just drag that right in. And where this kind of real yellow-green overlaps blue, it starts turning that blue tone underneath it to green, because, again, these are dye-based inks, and dye-based inks are transparent. Transparent as opposed to translucent or opaque, like many of the pigment inks would be. Okay, so we're not using pigment inks, we're using dye-based inks here. And again, which are different from, say, alcohol inks as well. Alcohol inks are also transparent. Okay, now see those areas? I'm kind of still working around those areas. In this scene right here, I worked around the moon. In these areas right here, I'm just kind of designating an area. I didn't have it really planned out, but I just kind of left a couple areas light, just to kind of vary that, vary the values within a given space. Here's a little background hill here that has a little bit area of light, and I think that looks better than just coloring up everything the same value across the whole surface. It kind of, if you have the same value going across an entire space, it kind of flattens it out and it doesn't look as dimensional. Okay, a really super bright green. Now this is going to look really strange after I apply this in. Usually it's usually too vibrant, it's too hot of a green. But remember, we're going to be layering additional tones onto this scene, so I feel that a kind of a bright foundation is really going to add to the overall richness of a scene. But again, it's not going to look, the end result won't have this existing green on the surface. Okay, I might have to go into a separate video when I get around to those pigment inks, but yeah, we'll just keep going as fast as I can. Okay, hitting some areas in the shadows with this darker green, and again, see this? I'm going over the top of that other really bright green. Now this is really kind of looking super bright in itself, so I'll kind of knock that down a little bit later. In terms of the intensity, I'll layer something over the top. This is a Memento ink. Kind of Mementos has a couple kind of different greens that are available in other lines. And I'll just add that down. So I always kind of start it on the edge and see what that kind of looks like before I add it all over the place. Okay. Now, I'm looking down here. I want to match this in terms of value, so I'm going to add a little bit of a darker edge. And I did switch back to my other tip here when I did that. Yeah, let's do it on both sides. See how I'm constantly turning the card too? Darker edge yet. Okay, greens and blues. If we want to, we can even move into another color family. This happens to be a pink right here. I don't want to use that pink right on here, so I kind of dab it off and use it in somewhat of a dry brushing motion or application. And I can add in really a subtle variation of this pink just by doing it on in a very light coat like that. And what I also like to do is I like to bring some of those colors of the sky into my landscape. You would think, oh, how's pink going to look overlapping green? But it all seems to kind of blend together nicely. As I see it, if the colors of the sky are kind of the source of illumination on the landscape, and especially right down here in the water, I like to bring a little bit of those tones down there like that. And in grass here, I like to bring in some brown tones into those areas quite often. This happens to be called desert sand. And I think it just kind of mellows out, you know, sometimes really vibrant greens and whatnot. I can use this right down here in the shadows. Bring some of this up in the sky. I brought some of those colors from the sky down in the meadow. Maybe I'll bring some of the colors of the meadow up into the sky. I don't think I want to do green up there or something like that, but maybe some of these real subtle foundation tones that I use down here. Okay, so there you have it. A little bit of darker shadows right here to kind of frame off the scene, some deeper shadows maybe in the meadow to kind of anchor the trees down a little bit more. And maybe I want to use a little bit of this brown tone down here, maybe around the rocks or in this little area of sand next to the banks. Okay. And if you notice, this Memento is a really light shade, so I'm not going on with like something like a really dark brown. I always start off kind of light and work darker as you go. Okay, so that's your basic color application right here. We've oscillated the values. We're going from kind of dark, light, dark, light, dark, light, dark, light, dark. Okay? And again, that kind of moves the scene visually in terms of values, and I think it adds a little bit of interest that way, again, than having that same darkness working all the way across. Okay, I'll finish this off in the next video.